And let's switch branch, stack application, this branch main to another branch. Before I switch branch, let's open StackDemo, stack data, and notice that there is no injection annotation on top because I call it constructor myself, and I add it to the session. Right? There is no annotation on top of stack data because in my controller, where it is controller, when I ask it for get stack data, and if it is null, I'm calling constructor myself and adding to the session. So I'm creating this bin manually by calling constructor. So for this reason, there is no injection annotation on top of stack data in this example. The same in main and any other except session scope bin. Now, let's open session scope bin and see what is the difference. Check out. First, stack data has component on top of it. Tells system inject it when you need it, right? Call constructor inject it when you need it, and session scope. So it is limited to scope. So I added some messages here, and messages are for purpose of illustration. They are not essential, you know. And in this case, you see it's also demo, because when you print this message, you don't need to lock pop, right? You need to lock it only when you access list. So in this case, synchronization block inside is more efficient than entire synchronizing all method, right? So I hope this concept now is more clear. That sometimes synchronized block is more efficient than synchronization all method because when you do something that doesn't require locking, you can do it outside of, okay, outside of synchronized block, because if you write synchronized here, it means everything inside synchronized block. But again, this is for illustration, but it is separate topic. Okay? So I changed it because now I have messages here, and also it's a demo. Okay? But major difference is this: that system is creating stack data now. Where it goes, stack controller. There is a resource, stack data here. So it is injected using resource annotation. Let's talk about resource annotation. So far, we learned about injection. We use it annotation outer wire, and no annotation when we inject it into constructor. Right? There are two more annotations, resource and inject. These two annotations, resource and inject, are provided for compatibility with Java Enterprise code, so it's easier to copy-paste and work similar way. So this annotation coming from Java Enterprise, and SpringBoot is implementing it to stay compatible for using similar code. Okay. How on earth it works right? And it does work right, because it picks the bin from session. It's not explicitly everything related to the session here. If you look up, parameters do not have session in it. Okay? The only place where session is mentioned is on top of the bin itself, session scope. Okay. Now let's see. Let's run it and see behavior with messages. It did create constructor, but it did create controller, because when it starts, it creates controller. And it didn't create session yet, right? It will create session when I talk to browser, from browser to the server. Click here, and now let's see. Session created, this is my listener. I copy-pasted listener. Session created, session ID is this. Constructor is called for StackData. So it created object after session is created. So we have an object associated with session. Edit attribute StackData. So now it is initialized. Now get items, call it so. And for some reason, it calls attribute replaced. I don't understand for some internal logic. It's calling attribute replaced. Most likely it is called attribute replaced where it is leaving the method. Assuming that we already did something to it, now it's replacing it in the session. Next, replace it printout. Okay. And now let's put some data, B, push. Process is called. To do push B is called, value B is pushed, attribute replace it. And now this is what I mentioned. It is the same value, even old one, because it is passing object by reference. When it calls to string, it has to print the same stuff. Although previous one was different, but since it goes to println, print to string of the same reference, because it passed by reference the same content. Right? B. Now it is redirected, and this is second time because it has redirection. So redirection is the same as in main. Next, what happens if I open another browser? Now this has B in it, right? What if I open another browser and go to the same address, localhost 8080? If I see B in this stack, I'm in trouble, right? Because it should not share data of one user with another user if it is in session. Now I open another browser. It was easy because I have another browser installed. And go to localhost 8080 and I don't see B in it. So it looks like it's working right. Now let's see what happens here. Session created. This is a new session, right? ID is this, and this ID is not the same as this one, right? At least it adds differently, right? New ID is created. Constructor for StackData is called. It created new object for new session, right? And now the same. I inserted this here, and this is new. Now I have two browsers. If I click reload B and B, if I click reload here and B disappears, I'm in trouble, right? It shouldn't disappear because it's supposed to maintain different data for different browsers. B didn't disappear, so it is indeed different data because it is session scope, right? How it is doing this? Magic, internal magic. Okay, and now this has B, this doesn't have B. Let's put A here. Push, now it has A. Reload it, it has B. This has, reload this, it has A. So it is indeed data per browser. And indeed it created session and it maintained its object in a session. This one, okay? And it is per browser. But this is singleton, this one for all browsers. How this works? It's under the hood magic. And it's even more interesting. So let's play with it and create constructor. Okay? Now let's have fun with this code. I want to create constructor in my controller. So generate constructor with parameter StackData. Okay. Remove resource. Make it private. Now it's private. Initialize it from constructor. Let's make it even final, so it's not able to reinitialize it. Do you see what I did? I pass it parameter to controller, constructor, and I even will put a message here, the same in the stack here. Let's open StackData. I want to click constructor is called. I copy constructor is called. Copy into stack controller. Paste. All right. So what did I did? I removed that injection annotation. Stack controller, stack data, and move it here. Okay. Stop and run. Do you think it will work now or no? This constructor is assigning this value only when controller is called. Okay? A controller constructor is called. This is final, it cannot be reassigned. Okay? Do you think it will work? Let's make a bet. Okay? Okay. Who thinks that it will work? Who thinks that it won't? Well, you see what I changed, right? Instead of having some fancy annotation, I just injected this into constructor. And this constructor has trace, it's called, and injected, right? Okay. Do you think it will work or not? Okay. When I did it first time, I didn't know. I know now because I tried. Okay. So let's see. Okay. So I changed this, so let's run. So what does it say? Tomcat started. Stack controller constructor is called. You see, constructor is already called. Okay? Stack controller constructor is called. But can you see constructor call it for stack data? You see it? Or you don't? I don't see constructor call it from stack data. Okay. How on earth it's called constructor with calling constructor for that? Any idea? Okay, it's getting more interesting. It called it constructor of stack controller, but it didn't call, it appears like it didn't call constructor of this. But it assigned it to stack data. Okay, now, didn't call it yet, but assigned it. Okay, next. Let's go to localhost 8080 and not this browser. I need two browsers in order to check if it's working right? So let's go back to this browser. Now we want to go to localhost 80 to create session. So I click this link. Browser sends request to localhost 8080. So let's see. Index is called. Pop it empty, of course. Now session is created. Session ID And now it calls constructor of stack data. Before it didn't call. Now it called it. But please notice that it doesn't call constructor of controller again. It just calls it constructor of stack data object. Right. And it still shows. It's linked. Okay, let's continue. Let's put letter A here, push. A. Okay, cool. It says replace it, blah, 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 the same stuff. And now we have A here for this session. Now let's open another browser, and if I see A there, I'm in trouble. It's not, I know it's not, it won't work if I open it. Okay. Next, let's open another browser like this one and go to localhost 8080 directly. Localhost 8080. Here it is. So what happens? Last thing, here it is. Indexes call it. Please notice that it didn't create new controller. It's still the same controller. It didn't call constructor, it's called it for controller. You see? No such call. It's the same controller. Session is created in its new session. Now it's creating new stack data object. And this is that object. And it is associated with session second time for who knows what reason, and displayed the correctly. From where? From this. Okay? Without calling constructor again, but it's different object. How on earth is doing it? Okay, let's continue. Let's put B here. Oh, C. Push. If I see here, in this browser, it's probably not working, right? Reload. I don't see here. It is indeed different object without calling constructor again, but access it the same way. How on earth it may work? All right. So, piece of theory. This magic is not Java specific. It happened, it's also, C# is doing the same thing behind your back sometimes. This idea is called proxy class. So when I annotated this stack data with session scope, it's an instruction for the system. Do not inject this class. Make a special class. Although you mark it as component, it says, do not inject this class directly. Make class that has the same methods, but instead of the data, it will access stack data object linked to it. Okay? What is the point? This stack data object will be replaceable. So this is proxy class. Okay? So this means instead of creating this object directly, create proxy object. It's an object with the same methods. But instead of doing this stuff, which is doing here, it is calling actual stack object and calling methods of that stack object. Why? Because this makes object replaceable. Okay? And so it is doing magic with proxy class. So instead of injecting stack data object, it is injecting proxy class with the same methods. It is also doing magic with name of the class, obviously, with the same methods, but those methods will pick proper class related to session, given session, well, proper object related to given session, and call those methods. Okay. So this magic only works because This is not the stack data class that I declared. It injected, instead of the injecting stack data class that I declared, it injected different class, actually, instead of it. That is accessing stack data object. That is replaceable, depending on what is the session ID. Okay. It looks strange, but it's actually, many frameworks is doing this behind your back to make code kind of simpler, but it makes code kind of mysterious when it's kind of simpler. Okay. You may realize that C# is doing, C# framework, .NET framework, are doing this quite often behind your back. It is replacing objects with proxy objects for various reasons. So it appears like you're accessing the objects that you created, but no. You're accessing another object which is generated that is calling methods of your object. Okay? So this is how this magic works. System is creating, instead of injecting object directly, it is injecting generated class that is accessing object. And methods of it, names of it are scoped data. We can see side effect of it if we want. If we print a name of this class name of this object. Okay. If we try to do it, we will see that it is not actual object. Okay. So let's try. Last time I checked it, it worked. So let's see if it works now. So this is stack data, right? So I'm inside of index, and I want to print log debug. Copy, paste, and stack data. Oh, what do I do? I want to just edit this one. Stack data, class name. It is just to print, so I will see what it